Hello and welcome to the Pinkbike podcast. My name is Henry and this week I'm joined by Kaz, Matt and Dario to talk about the latest news in mountain biking, answer some of your questions, as well as covering some of the tech that we're working on. Kaz, new year, what exciting resolutions are you absolutely committing to? And why does it involve, I don't know, what's I'm trying to think what you get your pitchfork out about. You're a lot more level-headed than me.
Yeah, I could have one. I'll just go on a little rant since it was what I was dealing with this morning a little bit I don't even know I want to open this can of worms again, but the filming of illegal trails, how popular that is, and including the entrances to the trails. Don't do it. I don't like whatever your
Kaz,
kids, you don't know how to stop.
You there.
No, let me rant.
No, Kaz, you've got to understand that this isn't a logical thought. It might feel like one.
Yeah. See, illegal trails have been filmed for years and it's fine. I'm not even going to get into the ethics of that. But like lately, people have been almost like putting GPS coordinates to how to get to these trails. Like, don't do that. Like,
we have
word of mouth.
An individual here in town that's like a repeat offender and just is not interested in opinions.
Yeah,
otherwise.
it's just like
it's
just one of those
pretty
things.
frustrating.
I don't understand. I actually don't get it, but just don't show the entrance. It's fine. I don't want to be like Mr. Gatekeeper, but like if you're in the town, you can find the trail by asking someone that knows about it. And I don't know. I don't even want to open this topic up really, but that was my morning. I was just like a little frustrated with that.
This is
my resolution.
My reframing of the issue is it's one thing to film an edit on a trail. Doing a follow cam is somehow more frustrating to me. I think it's like the bar of entry is a lot lower and it's kind of a repeatable, relatively uninteresting thing. But if you do like we had that video as a must watch at the end of the week last week, the Inferno. It's a sweet edit from like interior BC, bunch of kids riding trails that have probably existed for a long time, I'm sure, because it seemed that comments had some frustration about some of those things being built by other people and they were mad that they were riding on them. But at least they filmed a sweet edit and it has like investment in it. When it's just like a POV where you're rolling in through the entrance and then riding the whole trail and that's it. And like, it just bothers a bit more. I don't know why.
I think
but
for me, it comes down to like in terms of filming on pirate trails. And let's face it, a lot of these trails, no one actually has the right to be there. Like,
yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. I don't want them to get taken away. Like, obviously, for the record, I only ride fully sanctioned legal trails. Never would do anything else. But on the off chance that I do ride some other trails, I would like them to continue to exist rather than being blown up on the internet. They get heat drawn to them, and all of a sudden they get shut down because, So it's like one of those. It's a funny thing because it's like no one's really right, but I also feel like why
that's
not
true.
keep. No. But why not keep your spot really fun for you? It's like if you have you have this amazing playground, but then all of a sudden you kind of start, I don't know how to put it in the right words, but you're trying to
on the slide. Stop shitting on the slide.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Just like keep your really nice playground nice. You don't want it to go away.
Talk to the builder and keep it secret.
Exactly.
You can just ride it without filming it.
Right. Like you can just ride your bike. It's real fun. Like that's what I highly recommend everyone do is ride your bike and it's great.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what irks me is when brands have a edit go out of a trail that I like. They definitely didn't have any part in digging, or they didn't like even just say like ask permission, whatever. I'm in, just a heads up, and it's them like because here we're lucky in that we have like these very soft trails that ride really well in the wet. That doesn't mean you should hunt them out in the wet. It just means if there's a bit of moisture, they still ride well. But like this thing of like smashing rut trails, it's like it wasn't a rut trail at the start of the week. It was a really good trail. And now it's like, it's just so annoying.
And it's definitely like the thing, like talk to the builder. And there have been cases where brands have been really good about that. Like they know about the trail, they talk to the builder, they hook the builder up with whether it's money or parts or whatever, just to kind of like balance the scales a little bit. But another time, it's just one of those things that you can say it so many times. It kind of feels like banging your head against the wall. Like nobody really listens because they want to get those YouTube clicks. But just try to be conscious about where you are, like you're seeing.
Do you think, for me, if someone's like rallying a trail and they're sharpening through it, I'm like, fuck yeah. If someone's skidding, just if it's like a perfect Loma and they're presenting a skid as like some cool thing, I'm like, what is that?
Fine line.
Yeah. I mean, luckily, the free ride flick has kind of diminished in popularity a little bit, but there were those few years where it's like everybody had to just absolutely like
do the wiggle,
and it was a weird move. It wasn't even like a roost of a berm. It was just kind of like a skid kick flip your rear wheel around. I know it's kind of funny, but
do you think? But let's be fair, because let's face it, we do have previous on like sort of a bullshit like nonsense of like an us versus them, which didn't really exist in terms of like us and creators, and I think a lot of it was largely overblown.
Yeah.
But do we think that we need to? I don't know. Just to be fair, like the other side, I would say would be, we didn't build these trails either. We, as Pinkbike, probably profit off the, we sometimes publish videos of other people have made, which helps them, but also it profiteers off this illegal trail network and stuff. So it's like, it's a complicated issue, right?
Yeah, it is. And like the whole thing with mountain biking and illegal trails is kind of tricky too, because a lot of, the best riding happens on trails that aren't sanctioned. And it's definitely like a balancing act. I just think that you just have to be conscious of what you're doing. And, I don't have anything against people that they're making good YouTube content and riding trails and, getting people in the sport and all that. But there are just ways to go about it that are more like sustainable might be a word, just to try to make it so that it works, But
I think there's also a difference to my mind between showcasing something that's like a really cool, like experiential, I'm not saying the right piece about an amazing day. Then there is an element of like sort of clout chasing about revealing a local secret or something, which I think sometimes it misserves everyone, because I've got a friend that works in a bike shop here, and he said like he's a super, very relaxed person that's, does loads of community. And there's a local trail here that's sort of like, it's unmapped. It's like sort of like a local favorite, but it's always, and I've ridden it with people that are amazed how much more technical than they were told it is. But it's like they have a day in Squamish and they want to ride this trail, and then they end up being kind of misserved by this idea that like you can only have your best day riding on the most secret thing, when actually we're really lucky and the network's so good you can have a really wonderful day's riding on the blues,
Yeah. Sure. And I think it's a good, like, ideally, so say you do go to a new spot and you want to find the top secret, most hidden trail, you can. In most cases, like mountain bike communities are pretty receptive if you're nice. You come in, you go to the shop,
be a nice dude,
talk
and
to some people. They'll probably tell you where it is, and you can probably go ride. Or if you're kind of more embedded in the community, you can get in. I don't want it to seem like a gatekeeping thing, because I do think these trails aren't really closed. Like they're just trails. You can go find them in the woods. But on the same token, you just don't want every single person. These trails aren't necessarily built for like hundreds and thousands of people to go down them. I know it's such a, it's hard to say I can definitely say the right thing. Don't film on these trails, but also like, it's just one of those things. I understand the motivation. People find cool trails and they want to show them off. It's like, you had a sweet day. You're like, look what I did. It was cool, which is an understandable response, but I just don't think that it's more the entrances. There's like a weird, it's not unwritten rules, but it almost is, of like ethics, which is also another strange thing to bring up. But basically you don't show the entrance of a trail that might not be legal. You don't show the exit. You try not to show every single feature. You just leave some ambiguity just so, I mean, just so that it lasts. I don't know. I don't want to get too deep into this, but
that's fair. And also I think if it's someone, it's weird because here we have like the shuttle zone, and I feel like if people build a trail off the top of the shuttle zone, it's a lot of time it's races in the off season wanting something really cool to ride. Fair enough. People that kind of embrace that it's going to get kind of rallied there. Like you're building it in the most obvious place, and I think it's sort of fair game. But there's some other places where you can only get stuff from pedaling, and this has been the first year where they've like, and the builders that they've like, at least I've been in Squamish, have really started closing things, because it's like people just don't take the hint. Like it's January, it rained like 40 mil yesterday. Don't go for a hero lap on the softest trail. And it's other places, I think, like in California, I'm pretty sure, I guess you just get shot, so like summarily executed for riding soft trails in America. Is that what's happened?
Yeah. Well, I mean, some places you actually can't ride them. Like we're so spoiled too that we can even be riding this time of year. A lot of places so much clay, like your bike wouldn't even roll, and you wouldn't have a good time riding. And
at that point, you probably will wish someone would execute.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, genuinely. My bike weighs 400 pounds. I'm stuck in the woods, or in the desert. Yeah. It's one of those things. It's tricky, I guess. I mean, we're all very spoiled, but it just think about what you're doing.
Well, another thing on the other end of the spectrum is you might complain about the deterioration trails like we are now, but then if a race rolls through, there's also that element where I remember happened in Queenstown a couple of years ago, and this race rolled through, and it's like all our favorite local stuff, and it was just like, say la vie, that was gone.
Yeah.
And it happens on both ends of the spectrum. I guess it's not like one thing; it's just the general.
Yeah,
Let's just try and be sensible about this.
Yeah, race organizers have kind of got the hint over the last at least 5 years. I've seen maybe more that they put an effort back into repairing the trails that they're racing, or at least like maybe kick some funds over or something. So yeah, it's not just like they walk out the next day. See ya.
Yeah, that's like when I did the BC bike race 2 years ago. There was definitely some people in the comments like, "Oh, you're blowing up our trails. Like this sucks. It's lame. All these people." But I went back. It was in kind of like the Cumberland area on Vancouver Island. And I went back a few months later, and those trails had been like fully tuned up and repaired and things. But I do understand the frustration. Also, it's the same thing. Like you're a local, people come in, you kind of, you don't want to have that locals only vibe, but sometimes it can be frustrating when your favorite trail all of a sudden has new lines and stuff on it. So like it's a balancing act. Because the one thing I don't like about mountain biking, I thought we were talking about resolutions, but now I'm talking about all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah,
I don't like the like surfer bro vibe, or like
I'm gonna cut your leash,
only.
dude.
Yeah, like that doesn't like don't be like that.
I heard a funny one actually. There's a particular zone somewhere between us where the locals are a little feisty, and my buddy just told me this story. He was riding there with his dad. His dad was on an e-bike, and his dad was just chilling, like hanging out at the bottom. He went up for a lap, and like some local came over and was like, "What the hell are you doing here? F off, like get the hell out of here." And he's like, "I'm just biking around town waiting for my son. Like we have a cabin here, like we live here." It was pretty shocking.
No, yeah, I don't like the surfer bro vibe either. So I don't know, there's room for improvement in all this. Luckily we have lots of trails that are sweet to ride, but just be good.
Don't doom the spot.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's interesting, with how to put this. Let's say hypothetically, I know some people who work in the sort of area that if trails were going to shut down, it would be their job to do it. And hypothetically, they might turn a massive blind eye to what they should be shutting down. But sometimes they're like, oh my God, like this, like say a really obvious place, and it's just like trails like being rallied onto the road, and they're just like, how can I justify pretending not to see this?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like you just have to.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. Well, hey, one day let's maybe next week we'll do Pet Peeves 2, Back for Action.
Oh God,
Jesus, that was still kind of insane to me, but hey ho.
Yeah.
Matt, we'll do some show and tells.
Yeah,
I think that you've been spending a bit of time riding sanctioned trails with great drainage.
I was going to make that joke with my show and tell, God damn it. I was going to say, I've only ridden legal trails that I built myself.
Well, speaking of legal, Dario, I always get Dario DiGiulio confused with that other chap that's been a lot in the news recently.
Luigi Mangione?
Yeah.
My Italian fratelli, baby.
You left Bellingham recently. Where did you go? Walk me through it.
It was a quick trip to the city.
Just a little recon. Yeah.
I'm not saying you're a suspect, but I'm building a file. And at a certain point, I'll pass that file on.
You don't think... I mean, this opens a whole different can of worms than the content creator can, but... I'm going to abstain.
Have you been to New York recently? Interesting.
I haven't, though I was planning a trip.
Where did you go for Christmas?
I was actually really near Pennsylvania, interestingly enough.
I believe you were in Ohio, right?
Yes,
I
was
in Ohio. What does that rhyme with? CIO. That is a smoking gun.
Smoking gun found. Yeah. I wish him the best.
Imagine that was a turn for if that was it turns out this Luigi guy was actually literally wrong, innocent, and you just admit it now. But sorry.
Oh shit,
Matthew, talk us about your day riding the downhill bike on sanctioned, well-maintained trails the other day, and what your show and tell is this week.
So I actually chatted with some builders before I went there, and they had closed off a bunch of regular stuff. So, some stuff on Cypress is getting rebuilt, and we were on a new EXT Via fork, and their Arma V4 shock. All the new stuff. Trails are running good. The fork was pretty interesting. That's the upside down one. Pretty similar to or exactly the same setup as what Intense Factory Racing is on there now. So I got that M1 loaded up with that stuff. And yeah, the fork, I was a little bit surprised with the setup compared to their single crown fork. It felt just really heavy on the compression and a little bit stiffer off the top than I had anticipated. So yeah, just one day, maybe 4 or 5 laps on it. So still got some more not testing, but like more settings to go through, I guess, and see where we can get to and compare it to another inverted fork like the Dorado would be cool. And also the Fox 40 and stuff like that. So yeah, one day on that bike with that setup, and yeah, keen to get some more time on it.
Do you think, what's your experience been with inverted forks? Have you been mainly...
That's basically been it. I think I did 1 lap on my friend Forrest Riesco's bike way back in the day with a Dorado. We just like swapped for the day. Did 2 laps on our other bikes, and then yeah, I can't say. I mean, the conditions were quite soft and slow, so I didn't notice a whole lot of tracking or anything with that inverted design. And also going back to back would be maybe more easy to see that. But it didn't like alarm me or anything. So that was a good thing. But I would imagine if you get into some more bike park, fast, hard pack scenarios, you might see that come into play.
It's the same air spring setup as their single crown fork, right? With the dual chamber or 3 chamber
dual
system.
Chamber. Yeah. But
like a two air valves that you can adjust.
Yeah. So you have like a main spring and then the progression setting as well. But I don't believe it has the coil spring off the top.
The coil.
I'll have to double check that.
It looks like it might. I'm looking at the thing right now.
Yeah. We can cut this if unnecessary, but
hey, leave it in. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good.
There's too much to remember in this world.
Yeah.
HS3, so yeah, it should be the 3 springs, right?
Nice.
There you go.
And do you think, it feels like, how to put this? The EXD shocks felt like they're very popular across a wide range of bikes for a lot of different people. Maybe it didn't have the more damped feeling, maybe not such an outlier as the fork. It sounds like the fork is like, whew, that's a good chunk of damping, like very different.
It feels like a race fork. Yeah, like it is. It's supportive, but it's also very tunable. So who knows? With a bit more time, it can maybe get to a softer positioning on that. So yeah.
Kaz, you've been doing some stuff with a headset dampener. Dampener?
Yeah, it's a dampener. It just spritzes little bits of water. You push the button, and it's like...
It's like a cooling mist. So talk us through it. This is something we've been seeing on the World Cup circuit loads, kicking about. She's watched your video, which I guess will be out by now. It's on the Pinkbike homepage about, how this isn't a completely new idea, but it has got some interesting things about it. Just talk us through your general impressions, and will it be staying on your bike?
Yes, this is the Patamelon CS1. It's a steering damper, and basically it's the kind of like the revival of the Hopi steering damper that existed for really since, I think that thing came out in 99. So it's been around a while, but Jeremiah Bubar and some people in Tasmania kind of revived the concept, made it kind of modernized it. It fits on bikes with a single crown fork now or dual crown fork. And basically what it does, it adds damping when you turn the handlebars. It's position sensitive. So if you turn the handlebars in 37.5 degrees in either direction, so to the left or the right, that's where the damping happens. And if you turn it further than that, there's no damping. And then when you return to center, there's no damping. So basically it's only when you're turning your handlebars a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right that you feel it. Otherwise it's pretty normal. And that's just designed to kind of help you if you get some like tight turns or just kind of make it only happen when it's necessary, basically.
Does it feel like at that, once it goes past that 37 degrees, does it like fall off, or is it quite consistent?
It's pretty like it's pretty consistent. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's not like a trapdoor effect, I wouldn't say. And plus, when you think about it, like if you're turning past 37 degrees, that's pretty far. Like it's not something you would normally do that as a quick motion. So you don't really feel it like it's a sudden decrease.
As long as my turn bars can remain undamped, I'm happy. That's my main
going back
concern.
to the center, like it could feel a little weird if you cranked it on like all the way and you try to do a whip or like whatever a Schlabel like I can do. You can kind of feel it a little bit, but it wasn't too weird. It wasn't like it doesn't feel too crazy on jumps. But
so can you adjust the amount of damping it has, and can you adjust? But you can't adjust the angle where that
right. The angle's
in.
set because the way it's kind of hard to describe in words, but the way it works is like the way the damper, the inside of the tube, the shape of that tube determines where how the damping happens, because the way the fluid gets pushed through it, there's a part where there's like a thicker wall and a thinner wall. So when it reaches the thinner part of the wall, there's less damping, and the thicker part, there's more damping. But on the top, you have a dial that has 3 full turns of adjustment. The first turn, I didn't feel like it did anything, but then after that, the next 2 turns are noticeable. Like I tried it all the way on, which apparently is how Richie Rude does it. And it's hard to ride a bike like that. You can do it, but it's like going into turns, it makes you feel like you have to take like big wide outsides just to like, to kind of like the way it connects your front to the rear wheel, the way it feels like. It's interesting. It's as far as if it's staying on my bike, Henry, it's not going to stay on my bike, but I think that's more because of the terrain around here. It's a little bit slower speed, a little bit tighter stuff.
Unsanctioned trails in the wet.
It's just the flow trails really that I only ride.
And you have to get a different like connector piece for different bikes, right? Like you can't.
Yeah, you can't just like but
swap
you could.
it.
Correct, but you can buy basically the way they sell it is as the damper and then the mounting bracket. So you could have another bracket on a bike, and you could make it swap pretty quickly between bikes if you want. I wouldn't really. Most people, they want more than one. They should buy 2 units. They are expensive, like $600 by the time you get everything. So
yeah, I meant more
pricey.
just like out of just how it works logistically, not.
Yeah, and you have to trim the little rod that like the mounting piece for each bike. So it is like you get the mounting bracket that's set for that bike, but you could get another one for your downhill bike. And I don't know. You could do things.
Would the mounts that you have fit on that Canyon Spectral? Because I might put the Kiss back in. I'd be curious to try it.
We could look and see.
Because that was my problem. I had that Kiss and I was like, I just want this to be. It felt unchecked, and so it could be kind of how many accessories you can get on the handlebars.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I know that I think Jeremiah Bubar did experiment with the Kiss system as well. I don't know if he was able. I think he had it maybe rigged up where he had the Kiss on a bike and the Patamelon, which probably makes it feel interesting. I don't know.
It might just zero it out.
Yeah, it might just be nothing. And somehow it's like, but I do like this. I like the Patamelon better than the Kiss because it does have that part where it's undamped, where the Kiss system, you kind of feel it all the ways. You know, you turn it to the left and it just keeps pulling that one spring, and you turn it to the right and it keeps pulling no matter what. This one, it's like a little more normal feeling. I don't think it's for everybody, but in like super rough, chunky stuff, I could see, especially for downhill bikes, like Mount St. Anne, some of those high speed, like wide open kind of fire road stuff could probably be pretty beneficial, where you could really lean into it. Or I think the example I gave in the article is like somewhere North Star in California that has lots of loose, kind of fast stuff, but with big chunky rocks that just want to wrench your bars around. I think it could help there. But here, like where I live, is kind of slower speed, and it just doesn't feel like didn't make a big enough difference. I was like, this is a game changer, but it's a cool thing that exists. Like I think it could help some people. And
I think what's super cool as well is having more production options for. I know people that either ride, not necessarily just one-handed, but maybe they have some sort of disablement and disability, and something that settles the front from production. I think is super cool. To get more people,
Yeah, like even if you were coming back from an injury, like I don't know, a lot of us have broken wrist and stuff before. When you start out again, your wrist is weak and you're just trying to compensate. This could definitely kind of help keep your bars from moving that much, and just gives you a little bit more. Like you don't have to grab quite as tight. It just kind of takes away the edge. So there's a lot of potential for it. I'm curious to see where it goes. I know they've teased one for like a gravel bike, and I can see it like that kind of thing, like a bike packing bike. Well, I was thinking more like a bike packing bike. Imagine you had your panniers and it's like fully loaded. If you get like that movement, like for heavier things, I think it could work.
I know people who've put the visco sets on touring bikes, so you don't get the speed wobble.
Yeah, because I've done that before.
I've been curious about trying a similar thing on a mountain bike, because like FSA makes replaceable headset bearings with like a thicker or like a heavier damp thing, but it would also influence your turn back into center. So kind of disqualifies.
Like King Creek has that one too. Same thing. It's got some like almost like shims in it that affects it. But so I think it's cool to see them trying something different. It's different, but the same as existed, but maybe more easy to obtain. So I think before you had your kind of like core group of people that had the Hopi steering damper, but they weren't that easy to find. And so it's out there.
I remember Emily McGo running one, and I always thought it was super interesting.
Yeah.
On to another bike for your show and tell, Dario, we've got the Trek / Plus.
I do indeed.
Boy, oh boy. Boy, oh boy, you sure did like this bike.
It's really good. Yeah, I liked this bike a lot. I rode it a lot, and it is a bit frustrating because it's the first e-bike I've had that I wanted to ride instead of a pedal bike sometimes, if that makes sense. You know, like I'd say like I have a pretty steady diet of like mostly pedal bikes. Then every so often I'll ride the e-bike, maybe like one every 6 or 8 rides. But this one was like, oh, I could ride this every day this week and be pretty happy.
What about, was it the fact that it was like the sort, was it a workout aspect in terms of it being less torque?
There's an element of that because it's not like you don't just spin and get up the hill. There's like a degree of effort involved. So I can like tired my brain out, which is a big part of riding for me, but it just descends really well. It's a really, really good mountain bike.
It goes downhill very well. Like I'd say I only rode it a couple of times when we first, when Trek came to town and dropped them off, but it's one of the best descending mountain bikes I've ever been on, I would say.
Yeah. And I tried to make that the point of the review without being too effusive, but it is really, really good. It's sick. I wish the sizing was the exact same as the Slash. That's my only real frustration with like the concept of the bike, but I like.
Can you talk us through that? What's the difference?
Yeah, so Trek does 4 sizes for their e-bikes versus 5 to 8 for their mountain bikes. I think historically they've got like some of the better fidelity in size ranges where they'll have like every possible increment of reach and stack and now chainstay. But with the e-bikes, it's a little less, fit. So you kind of have to choose between a wider range of sizes, or a wider gap in sizes rather. But that aside, bike works really well. And I tend to like a smaller e-bike anyway. Just like the extra weight. I feel like a slightly smaller size tends to match that better.
And what is it about this bike then that, because I've ridden the standard Trek Slash,
right?
Is it just the weight that makes it that much better?
So. I think it's weight. It's because the kinematic is identical. The geometry, save for reach and stack, is identical. It is just a little bit heavier, so I think that makes a big difference. It just keeps it a little more planted, a bit quieter.
So it actually benefits it then descending.
I think it does. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like where that weight is too. Like if you have an existing Slash regular pedal bike, you couldn't just stick a water bottle full of lead on it and expect it to feel like the Slash e-bike. I think that having the motor weight and the battery where it's located, something about that really makes it feel good.
Wow. And it weighs like 70 pounds though, right?
No, it's 46.
Yeah, I mean, basically 70 in my mind. I round up.
It's 5 pounds heavier than my pedal bike.
Yeah, it's true.
Which is crazy.
But is that with proper tires and stuff, or is that with like
proper tires? It's 47.
Okay.
With the Bontrager tires, it's 46.
Wow.
So.
Wow. Hey,
that's pretty cool. They were frustrated. It's a $12,000 US bike. And does not come with a perfect build kit. Like it comes with a 170 dropper, comes with rims that don't work that well unless you retape them. It comes with the Bontrager tires, which they've improved, but they're still not great.
But how? £12,000.
So much money.
12,000 USD, which is how many pounds? I mean, a ton of. No matter what currency you're translating it to, it's a really expensive bike.
But they make a cheaper one. Is a cheaper one? What's the spec like on that? Is that any better?
It's fine. It's like a rhythm fork, SLX brakes, SLX XT drivetrain.
Probably would go.
It would go. Like it would be fine. Frame and motor and battery are identical, so you get the like meaningful stuff. But
there's no option, hey? There's
just 2 options. Yeah, it's just high low, and then the low priced one is still like $8,000.
It's a funny thing with e-bikes. They make these super expensive ones, but on e-bikes, you don't need the fanciest stuff. Like the cheaper suspension feels better on an e-bike than it does on a regular pedal bike. I think just because the extra weight can like helps you sit into things. And like, so you can put more budget suspension components. If you put good brakes, like a tier or 2 down on the suspension, then your e-bike is pretty good. But
Yeah,
You think
well,
I think I advised somebody the opposite the other day.
Really?
put
like,
bad brakes on a bike?
no. Like you need better suspension than like the base model stuff to handle the extra weight.
I feel like the weird rebound, like top out and kind of flutteriness you can get out of cheap suspension is compensated by the extra weight of an e-bike generally.
I would say that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends. Yeah, you don't if you like bottom of the barrel suspension, probably not ideal. But especially with the shock, though, I don't think you need like the absolute fanciest. But I don't know.
I think
the brakes the most important thing for e-bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just big brakes. Big brakes, sensible rims. I mean, that's something I find crazy is like carbon rims have come so far, and I don't know which ones to spec on this this trek, but like it got to a point where it's like there are good carbon wheels out there, but carbon wheels from like 3, 4, 5 years ago where they went that like super stiff but like not really strong but stiff. It's just like just put some alloy ones on. Nobody wants that style of wheel. Like I don't know, to me anyway, I think they just kind of suck. But hey ho, that's just me. Should we get on to some questions? My show and tell was the same as every week. That spy is just fucking amazing. We'll move on. Yeah, and that's simply done enough. I'm gonna hit some questions. We're gonna see what's up. Do our best to give some sensible advice.
Hey, Pinkbike. This is Austin from Martinez, California. So I have a riding question for you guys this time. So in my heart, I want to be big jumps guy, but my brain won't let me be regular jumps guy. What are some ways you've gotten over the mental blocks limiting your skills? A little bit about my experience. I've been riding and racing for about 10 years, XC and Enduro. I've also done some big jumps on vacation to places like Whistler and Queenstown. Not saying that I've cleared A-line or anything like that, but done some pretty good-sized jumps that were pretty fun. I've also noticed that, I've done those big jumps, but also when I come home, I've been not willing to hit features that I've done in the past with confidence. So yeah, not sure what's up with that. Would love to hear how you guys deal with this mental block, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say. All right, thanks.
Well, this is an important question. Dario has disappeared. I don't know if that's...
I'm here, but my camera just cut out, so sorry.
Okay, well, we're going to bravely continue. And
I'm figuring this out. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Hopefully no one wanted to see me anyway.
So, I mean, this is a good question. I mean, I think what you determine as a big jump is kind of almost like location dependent to a regard. It always amazes me that you go ride Whistler and everyone talks about A-line like they're really, really small. And then to this caller's point, he mentions it there as a reference point because other places in the world, they seem really, really big. It depends, what you normalize in your local scene.
Yeah, like A-line jumps are big. If you go there and stop by the side of the trail and look at them oh, these are very big jumps. Actually, but they're very well built too, which can be kind of goes with his question a little bit. Like it's way easier to hit very well built jumps than janky jumps that are even half the size, just because of the technique and how they toss you into the air and that type of thing. But yeah, it's it is condition or location dependent.
We're going to come to your guys' advice for how to approach this in a second. But before we do, I just want to be an advocate for listening to fear. Don't worry about it,
sure.
mate.
Yeah, fear is there for a really good reason.
You don't need to force
Everybody has it at a point, and if you don't, then there's probably something you should get checked out.
Chemical imbalance.
Yeah.
As long as you can get through the trail features on the trails you like riding, which sounds like it isn't A-line. I don't know. I'm just a big believer in just don't progress.
Well,
don't feel you need to. Just enjoy it. I've kind of given up on progressing. I just enjoy it. Like Hucking Henry was around for 3 months, and I realized it wasn't for me.
Don't you think that it's going to continue to happen inevitably? Like, as someone who rides a lot, Henry, you'll probably continue to progress whether you want to.
Oh yeah, but it's against my will. I am begrudgingly progressive.
Getting dragged along.
Actively trying to regress.
But I've realized that. To be honest, I've been like a similar journey with my relationship between risk and reward. If I can just get better at turns, that's all I want. And it's funny when you get better at turns, it feels like you just get better at other stuff anyway. because your trail speed's that much higher, and you just end up like being so much more dynamic on the bike. And obviously this is off topic, but I just feel, I don't know, just like basically I was talking to a friend about it this weekend, and we're talking about like, you know, like sort of the more stunt riding you get here. And I'm just like, you don't have to do anything. There's no rule book to this. Like, just do what you enjoy. And if you want to get better, I mean, absolutely. We'll get into this now, but I also want to be I don't know, just say like,
yeah, but it's also fun because you can learn these things. And then once they're like, a lot of times, once you do start hitting certain jumps or features, they seem scary until you do them. And then if you do them successfully, they're like, oh, it's sweet. And you just hit it every time. It's like it is that little like progression building block.
But I think, Kaz, you have a very like almost like stoical approach to jumps. I've been going up Worcester chairlift and see you ride by yourself lap after lap. That is it, Dwayne Johnson, the step up into the step down on a trail bike.
Yeah.
And I think that I know that we normalize it, but that is a big fucking jump. And we're there just like, yeah, another lap, you know? And I think that
it is just what you're used to, you know, I think.
Yeah, but I would say like I'm not a naturally skilled jumper or even bike rider, I would say. It's just lots of practice and lots of repetition. And like, even for like, there's still plenty of jumps that I won't hit. They're just too big, but I think it's kind of learning where your limits are. And it is, I think for me, the methodical approach has kind of helped, you know, like I've obviously crashed and had bad injuries and all that stuff too, but I'm not someone that just like throws caution to the wind and just hits things blind. Like, I got this, it's going to be fine. Like, it's not me. I'll, you know, take your time, look at things, roll up. Like, even like I hit a new thing the other day, but I did my normal, like rolled up a few times. And like, I usually have the rule where I have to, if I roll up more than 3 times, I won't do it. That's just like one of those, like, not a superstition, but usually helps pretty good. Like, if you can't picture it by the 3rd time, it's not going to happen, at least for me. Where I have buddies that can roll up to things 40 times and hit it on the 41st time. And you're like, that's crazy to me. But it's just all about like breaking things down in like bite-sized bits. And then if you're not feeling it, if you don't feel confident, just don't do it. Like, it's going to be there. It's not going to go away. But for this guy, I think that, yeah, practice on the smaller things until you feel super confident. Like, whether it's like a skills park, if there's like a blue and a black and a green run, you know, like get the blue intermediate stuff so dialed that you can basically do it with your eyes closed, and then just start chipping away at the bigger stuff and see how it goes.
That repetition progression that you just talked about is really key. And then I think you also get that, like, he talked a little bit about regression, like where he comes back from a trip and then isn't hitting things he's hit before in his hometown. And that might be a case of, you know, when you go to a park, you're kind of locked into the trail and you have that frequency that you talked about, Dario. Like, the more you're doing it, the more familiar it is. And then the more you can sort of maybe push to go a little bit faster on that next jump. You know, you've hit it a few times, it's fresh in your mind. So definitely the repetition is important. But then also, you know, if you're regressing on things at home, maybe go back to something next to that jump or whatever slightly below it, and then build your confidence on that. Do your in runs like you talked about, Kaz, and definitely give yourself enough time, and don't be afraid to walk away from it either. Like, there's, like Henry said, like, there's no rhyme or reason why you have to do it. You're just out there having fun biking.
Yeah. And it can be helpful to find someone that can tow you in. Like, I'm personally not a big fan of getting towed in, but there are people I know go a similar speed and have a similar kind of jumping style to me, where I can kind of hop on their wheel and get towed in pretty successfully. You do need to know this person's riding style, because there are people that I could follow and you think you're the right speed, and then all of a sudden they gain, like, they just jump in the air and they go like 10 feet further than you, even though you were going the exact same speed. So it doesn't always work, but it can be nice to get a little toe in just so you can see how the jump looks. So that's one thing that can help sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. Those like stealth boosters. Yeah. And then at the end, like, you know, after you just case the fuck out of something, they're like, oh yeah, I did ride BMX for like 20 years. You should have mentioned that. You should have mentioned.
Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, it's a chill hit, just trail speed. And then all of a sudden you're just bottom bracket casing it. Like, what happened?
I think trail speed is one of my favorite phrases in mountain biking. Trail speed. Well,
yeah.
It's like a bike length at trail speed.
Yeah, it's a bike length. Yeah, it's a bike length drop, trail speed. No big deal.
I am guilty of bike length as a metric that I use too often, and I like checked myself recently by going to a jump that I thought was bike length and actually holding my bike up to it. It was like 4.5 bikes long.
It's a real modern bike.
Yeah. not bike
I think
length.
bike length's a feeling, though, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It feels like
it feels like bike length. It's like not that big.
It's also dependent on the trail speed too, right? So like
exactly.
you go over it, you're like one bike length, two bike length. No, it's actually
There's like 4. An algebraic formula that is like trail speed x bike length equals actual length of jump.
Yeah.
I think as well, there's something to be said for if you're really comfortable on a trail that is maybe within your wheelhouse, try riding those jumps, either going slightly slower than you think and clearing them, and slightly faster, and getting really comfortable with like sort of either salvaging something when you're going too slow or keeping the bike low when you're going too fast, just as a way to get really comfortable with like bike control. I think it's something that it makes you, I don't know, feel like you're more in control of how that jump's going to look. And I think for people that maybe aren't that comfortable getting in the air, or, you know, understanding like how their actions influence a jump, I think it's a super useful.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I never like totally thought about that, but it's it makes a lot of sense because you sometimes do that depending on trail speed. If it's talking about trail speed, if you know, if the conditions are wet or really dry, you might have to squash or pop that same jump you've hit 1,000 times. So yeah, good point.
Yeah. I rode a trail I ride a lot yesterday, and it was incredibly muddy, and I had to pedal into a jump I usually coast into and pop more than I usually do. And I only had that confidence because I've ridden the trail like, 50 times. But, I think that's kind of the repetition that I'm talking about with the, getting comfortable with jumps. Like it doesn't really matter how big they are, but like you get attuned to the feeling of judging speed and knowing how to pop and all that. And that just starts to translate bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Well, on to the next question. We hope we helped. Sort of, maybe. We'll continue on bravely.
Guten Tag, Pinkbike. That's Eric from Germany, long-time listener. And I'm really enjoying the podcast. So thank you for that and keep up the good work. I'm currently building up an Atherton A200, which I'm really, really stoked about. And I'm stuck with the choice of wheels at the moment. So I'm really interested in the E13 Sidekick hub, which we heard a lot about past couple weeks and months. But I didn't find any information about the wheel set as a whole, or specifically the...
I think this is our fault, Dario. I think me and you did the first look. We're going to carry on.
Well, in our credit, it was murky initially, but it's clear now. So I do have an answer for this. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, we'll carry on the question, but yeah, sorry for that.
I think it's the Grappler Flux DH carbon rims. So maybe you can comment on compliance and stiffness of the wheel set as a whole, or maybe can compare the rims to, let's say, the NVM9s, which all of you were really stoked about. So that would help a lot. Thanks a lot. Keep up the good work. I really enjoy listening. Bye-bye.
Sweet.
All right.
Sounds cool bike. Got a lot of things going on. Dario, you spent a lot of time on these. Well, let's start with the wheels, and then Matt, I'd like to touch a bit upon the bike, just because that's something you've ridden. And bikes
I think we should go bike first. Is this a bike that
first.
Matt, you've ridden this bike? Is this a bike that needs a pedal kickback device?
I would say no. I thought that it was quite good in that sense. There wasn't a lot of chain feedback. But that being said, I've also ridden O-chains and other chain damping devices on bikes I didn't think that needed them, and it only makes it better. So if you can afford it, why not?
Fair.
Did I ever mention that I rode that Specialized prototype? I don't think I did. I don't think I ever talked about it before.
I don't think I heard about that.
No, that sounds pretty cool. You should have made a video on it or something.
I should have. You'd have thought I brought it up by now, but I'm just such a modest chap. I never thought to mention it. Yeah, that was a bike that it felt like it was completely muted through the feet. And I'm sure there's the whipping, there are two things going on. There's the tugging of the rearward axle path on bikes, and there's also the whipping of the chain. So maybe you could mute that a shade, but that bike was, I don't know what was exactly going on with that bike, but felt like it offered great tracking whilst being very, very muted. And maybe that wouldn't be a bike that I'd be, grappling to get an E13 wheel on it, you could say. But Matt said, there are I don't know. I think in terms of like the whole riding experience, you'd be surprised at where sometimes these things can show their faces. Dario, can you talk us through a bit about the E13 system? I guess you've been riding it for a while. Kaz, I know you've been experimenting with and having lots of fun on different O chains and rim packs as well. And so, but Dario, start with E13 and what's your overall impression so far, and the rim compliance as well?
Yeah, so I have only ridden the Grappler Enduro rims and the Sylvan Trail rims within E13's wheel lineup, and those are both systems that come with the Sidekick hub. They also make a downhill rim. I have not ridden that, so I can't really comment on durability, but I have been able to break the Enduro rim on my Tallboy, and that isn't meaningful necessarily because things happen, things break. I didn't notice it until I was taking the tire off, and it held air just fine. That said, I would assume, and I think this is correct, that their downhill rim is beefier, has more carbon, and is more durable. Anyway,
well, I think even the Enduro rim now, they're sending it with, it's heavier, the production version, compared to the one you've got now. I think is production, where I think the one they've changed it a bit.
It was pre-production, yeah, that old chestnut.
That old chestnut, yeah.
Regardless, I'd say if you're looking to ball out, you could just get the Sidekick hub and then lace it to a different rim if you so please. I just looked it up, and you can buy those M9 rim only, not from Envy, but from other retailers. And then they are a 32-hole drilling, which is the same as the Sidekick. As to how the Sidekick works, I think it's great on bikes that benefit from a chain separation device. Whether it's critical on bikes that don't benefit as much from it, it's elegant. So like relative to other offerings on the market, what's nice about it is it's integrated into an existing component. It's not something you have to add on to the bike, but it is still a bit more complicated than a normal hub. So
I think there's some bikes that I'd like my time again with that orange with an E13 hub. Oh, mother may I. That would be just...
That's just too good. I'm surprised you didn't keep that. You really liked that bike.
I did, yeah. I did, but I... honestly, like...
You didn't want to leave your meme behind.
I didn't want to leave my meme behind. And also, like... And this sounds... Like, it's going to sound like the worst, most terrible, embarrassingly detached thing you've ever said in your life. But I'm just trying to, like, slim down the amount of bikes I have. I just... Like... I know I've got the Spy, which is great. I've got the Temper, which is great. And that's enough for me. Like, it covers all the things. And I think the orange was amazing and I loved it. I really, really did. But not having water bottle compatibility.
Right.
Just...
Yeah.
I know that's... I mean, yes, you can get the Fidlock thing we talked about before. I don't like that as a solution for me personally.
Yeah.
And, c'est la vie.
I don't know. To this question, though, it kind of, I think with Matt's advice of like, maybe it's not critical, and then the like cost whirlwind that you might enter, it's, maybe is kind of my answer on it. But ride it with the stock wheel that you have. Assuming you have parts that you're building it up with, like ride it with those, feel it out, see if that's something that you might want to change, like vis-a-vis pedal kickback. I hope that these become a demoable thing at some point. Like shops will have a Sidekick type thing that you can hop on and see if it makes a difference for you. But until that happens.
But do you think, and Kaz, just a question for you, anyone that has ridden in a bike park on flat out, beaten up trails knows how much once the speed gets high, how much the feet come into play on a lot of suspension systems to an extent. What are the effects of riding one of these systems when you're not going? Are there any effects when you're not going really, really fast? And what are they? What are the benefits on just normal speed, home trails?
For me, it's mostly just the quiet. Like it just makes that chain so much quieter. And so even if it's not super high speed, if it just, on a smooth trail, it doesn't really do anything. But if it's a little bit rougher, it just quiets things down a lot. So you do get that calmer sensation in your feet, even in bikes that have relatively low pedal kickback. I do think a lot of this just has to go to the chain flailing around, and that's something that you feel more than you really realize until you stick like an O chain on. You're like, oh, that's a lot calmer, quieter bike. Like, so I think that there's definitely benefits. Yeah,
I mean,
it's like, yeah,
I definitely noticed it.
Sorry, go on, Matt.
I have that O chain. I mean, this is slightly different than the E13 Sidekick hub, but yeah, chain damping device. I have one on that nuke-proof Giga, which is a single pivot, and going back and forth with and without that, it makes a huge difference under braking when you hit like steep, rooty trails where you're braking over top of those, and the bike just opens up and feels way more active with that. But on a bike like that Atherton, I don't know if that would be as noticeable. But yeah, going back to that question he asked, it could be like a trial and error thing, like Dario suggested. Like if you have the opportunity to go back and forth with one of those wheels or another chain damping device, then it could be worthwhile, and maybe you'd love it.
I think these chain devices, having spent a bit of time on a couple of different ones, I really do think they reframe ideas around kind of, I don't know, reframe or perhaps even undermine anti-rise values as a way to really distinguish how a bike feels under braking. Because for me, they just change the chassis dynamic so much in a really lovely way. Like it really, and we've gone so much, about, it feels like as an industry, we haven't really settled on exactly what the best anti-rise is, or what the best solution to chain growth is, but it just feels like it really changes and reframes that. And the way these bikes brake in the wet, I think, is really useful.
That really came to life with that framework, hey? That was kind of the one that opened up that mindset for you, hey?
I think so. I think just running back to back, going from between two different sets of wheels and then different chain rings on the Rimpact and the E13, riding in the wet here over winter, I just feel like my braking runway is so much longer, to the point where now I'm a lot harder on wheels and tires, because like going off something, like going off a drop, I'm happy to just get on the brakes for the landing, knowing that my suspension's still going to work. And now I'm just butchering other things. So, which in some way shows how well it works.
Yeah.
And it just gives you a different problem, right? But hey, hope that answers the question. I would say ride the bike first before spending that money, if you can. And if you're building it all up before you've ridden it, it's not going to hurt, certainly. And if you're getting a dream build and you want to go all out, and you can, it'll be something really, really special. Cool. On to the next question.
Hey, this is Justin from North Vancouver. I was just listening to your awards show podcast, and you mentioned that the Specialized Genie shock, that you were wondering what it'd be like in a fork. I was wondering how different that two-stage air chamber in the Genie shock is from the Öhlins fork. My Öhlins fork has a pretty appreciable ramp up at the end, but doesn't seem like the ramp up chamber makes much of a difference in the beginning 80% of the stroke. I haven't ridden the Genie shock, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Thanks for the podcast.
I've tried to explain this before, and I've done a really bad job of it. Using Microsoft Paint, can I have a run at this?
Please.
Okay, hold on.
Oh, I love that.
Right.
Wow.
Oh my God, we're good.
But you have to also use words for the audio.
I will use words.
Can I just do a quick 2-sentence words thing?
Yeah, sure.
While you're painting, I think the Genie shock is there's a really distinct point where it shifts over, where the other two-stage air springs, or sorry, not two-stage. The Genie shock is two-stage. The other two chamber air springs that we're talking about with Öhlins or Manitou, etc.
Sorry, I'm just laughing at myself.
They just kind of it kicks in immediately, but you don't notice it because it's relatively less of an effect. But as the main chamber compresses, it becomes closer to that secondary chamber. So it's more gradual. With the Genie, it is like you hit a point and then it changes.
Yes.
That's it. Now to the Microsoft Paint.
To this, right. I'm locking in. Okay, so normal suspension curve, and you can go like, with a token, you can do a bit of this and stuff. I think the Öhlins gets to a point and you can basically choose like where that hinges around here with these like two chamber systems, you know what I mean? You can basically have something more linear if you have like a closer to a 1-to-1 ratio, or have something that feels further towards the end of the stroke if you have like a really high ratio. Does that make sense so far? Yeah, I think with the... Oh, no, don't want too far. Oh, no.
People that are just listening, Henry's just drawing diagonal
Just
lines,
drawing
some of them
shit.
with sharper angles at the end. And
Thank you, Kaz. Thank you. I think with the Genie, you can basically just have like 2 hinges in the thing, and you can choose where they sit more. And that's how I felt riding it. And I'm not saying that it's like, that's the way I visualize it. Like, you can basically, through the volume spaces, you can just change where that sits. Does that make sense?
I guess the tuning bands give you a little bit different. You're kind of moving a little bit different part of the curve compared to maybe the Olins, but they are accomplishing a fairly similar thing. And because there's not a fork version of the Genie, we can't really say how it would feel in a fork. But
I think theoretically a fork application as it sits with like 70% mark being the transition point would be kind of weird, just because you'd move through the first 70% of travel really freely and then suddenly have ramp up, and that's not typically what we like out of a fork. But in the shock application, it is like simulating that longer travel wheel is moving more for the first 70% with the little catch at the end.
But with the Genie, does it seem like, Specialized have sort of engineered a room that has no door and then spent a lot of money engineering a beautiful fire escape? Like,
yeah,
they make
I think
the
that's actually
frames.
that's an
like,
interesting analogy.
Why not just make the suspension curve different than being like, do you know what I mean? Like, solving a problem.
Yeah.
They've great. I don't know. It seems.
I think their argument is like they really like the doorless.
It looks good.
Room.
The doorless room looks nice. Smooth walls.
Yeah, I'm fine with there being different flavors and some of them being weird. Like, that bike works for me, but that said, I don't know that it's like the end all be all solution. I
think the bike works great, but I think it's a little strange that they just didn't give the bike a little bit more progression so you could run other shocks. It is like they could have put a door in the room, but they didn't. Like, if we're going back to that analogy.
You can run other air shocks.
Just a little thing.
You can run other air shocks. I'd say coil shocks are a weird spec choice on this bike. Like,
exactly, but even it's a still fairly low progression for any bike out there, really, isn't it? Like, is it 11%?
It's similar to Yetis.
Is it 11? Do you know the number?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it's 17, but
that's not that low.
Don't quote me on that.
It's kind of. It's not
under 20.
That's like air shock progression. It's not like crazy though. I thought it was lower than that. So I might be wrong then. So,
but do you not just
build
think?
A cap flap?
I don't want to sound like I'm banging the old drum, but could they not just put more compression damping on the bloody shock with an external adjuster, and then?
Well, the nice builds do have an external adjuster. So like the Pro build has like a 3-position batwing adjuster.
But 3 positions. Like, give us like 15 positions. Like, just give us a clicker. I don't.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I don't know. I'm not defending it. It works well for me, but I agree that there are some frustrations.
Like, I think my frustration is not that it's not a system that works well and is going to get something really good for a lot of people, which I think is great. It's that I think it's from riding it on that in field test, to me, it felt like really close to being a really great solution, not just for specialized bikes, like in terms of technology that be applicable in lots of different ways. More tunability is great. And I think it's very intuitive and I think it's very effective, but just that final finishing bit would just been like a effective compression adjustment on the external. But hey,
it's like 14% progression. I calculated that while we were doing it. So it's pretty low, but not crazy. I mean, it's like low. It's on the lower side of modern.
So to recap before, and also, sorry, I genuinely thought I could talk and draw Microsoft Paint at the same time. I couldn't do it. And my brain
Bob Ross
died.
is a genius.
It really is.
To recap, there isn't anything quite the same in Fork for potentially valid reasons, Dario.
Yeah, I think that there is potential for integration in a Fork setting. I just don't. Well, luckily, it's not my job to come up with those solutions. So I'd be curious what they do. But my guess is they'd have to change the transfer port of like where it goes from very large volume to smaller volume, because it's just a different desired effect. The tunability element, the kind of movement you can get out of the air spring that is that high of a volume is interesting, but I just don't know that it's like something we're chasing in forks in the same way that you would with a shock.
Yeah, I think forks are great right now. I think forks
we're getting to a really good spot. Yeah.
Good. Can I just also acknowledge a theme in this week's questions? They're all very to the point, and it's like it's a single issue message. Sometimes people put these really lovely messages on, but they're like 2 or 3 minutes long with like a dozen questions in. And for just the way the podcast works, it's really hard to use them. So please leave your messages. You can visit them on the Pinkbike homepage article. There'll be a little link. But just one question. Choose your favorite one. And you can always call back another time should you really need other things answered. On to the next one.
Hello, podcast. My name is David, and I've been a fan of 50 mil stems and 35 mil rise bars for a while. However, some of the articles and personal bike checks on Pinkbike this year, most noticeably Dario's Gooseneck Yeti, has me wondering a few questions. First off, what are your personal opinions on stem length, bar rise versus stem spacers to achieve a given stack? And second, how do you go about figuring out a good cockpit combo of stems, bar heights, and what have you for a given bike that you're testing? Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to your answers, David.
Okay.
Well, this is a good question. It's incredibly personal. Matt, what are we trying to... So let's start with stem length.
Yeah.
What are we trying to affect with stem length?
I was going to say, let's start with bars.
Okay, we'll start with bars.
Yeah, to a degree, I would say that the rise, as long as they're placed at the same rotation in the stem, the rise doesn't affect the reach of the bike, right? So if you get a higher rise bar, it's in the same roll on the stem. If you get a higher rise bar, you're going up in stack without eating away at any of the reach.
It comes in a little bit.
But if like, let's go apples for apples, it's exactly the same. Mm-hmm. I suppose if it's...
That's the argument,
just take
anyways.
That assumption just to be...
Stems have more effect on your reach.
Yeah, obviously.
They'll shorten your reach as you raise them
The
up.
extrusion of your stem matters more than the rise figure of your bar when it comes to reach.
Yeah.
Well,
and opposite of that for stack.
Yeah. If you're trying to get a higher stack, you're going to lose reach using the stem spacers. And then stems, it's a personal choice. It affects the steering. It also affects the theoretical reach where your hands are relative to your feet. So yes, it can get bigger, but the longer the stem, the more effect that has on the steering, or has a different effect on the steering. And that can come down to the head angle of the bike and also the rider fit and how they steer the bike, where they're sitting on the bike or riding on the bike and how they weight it. It can different folks have different preferences for that. So yeah, it's a hard question to answer what's the best or what's correct. And luckily stems are fairly inexpensive part of the bike as well as bars. So you can play around with those and find what works best for you. But like I said, it also comes down to the bike. And Dario's got a question. This is such a can of unsolvable worms that I'd almost recommend choosing something and just sticking to it because find bars that you like, find a stem that you like.
Unsolvable Worms is a great name for one of your punk bands, Dario.
Yeah, they're definitely banned. I'm going to go watch them playing soon.
Unsolvable Worms. I'll make a poster. I have never come up with a solution here. I have things that I prefer, but I don't know that there's an end all be all. I think it really is case by case, but I would say the one thing that I do like about a longer stem, like a 50 mil, is weighting the front on bikes that don't do that naturally. So if you have an enduro bike with fairly long reach, slack head angle, but that happens to have a shorter rear center, it can sometimes be difficult to weight the front as evenly as you want to, but a longer stem does help with that a little bit. There's also always the element of using stem length and bar height to fix fit issues.
Well, I'll tell you what. Well, let's look at it this way. Imagine if Kaz, you're buying a new enduro frame. I know it's like a run-of-the-mill, nothing crazy in the angles. And it's not up to a product manager that's going to supply you with a full bike. You're buying a frame. What would be your baseline stem length and what would be your baseline handlebar rise?
For me, I'll be 40 mil stem and 40 mil rise bars these days, 35 to 40. But I've been on 40s lately. I've been really liking it.
40s I would still consider that quite high. And I'd say that'd be a time 5 years ago that would be considered.
Yeah, I've been running 35s for the last while now. And then now that there's 40s available, I've been running them. And I like it. I do think like I have a 50, but that gets kind of, for me, a little bit goofy. The feeling just too upright, and just, it's like only in the steepest stuff is when it feels good. But for me, the 40 is pretty good. I do like a more upright position while climbing and descending. And, you can, if you go too high with the bars, climbing could feel kind of weird, especially if you had a steeper head tube angle, because you kind of start like coming off the back of the bike. But overall, the 40 has been pretty fun.
And if you were to go to a shorter travel bike, we noticed in this year's field test, most of them I think came with 40 or 45 mil stems, that sort of territory. But if you're going for a shorter travel bike, would any of that change?
Yeah, like on a shorter travel bike, which like a modern XC bike these days, they tend to have a little bit shorter reach still. So it's designed to run with a longer stem. So then I will probably go 50, which is still very short for the XC world, but I just have my own preferences. I'm not building a, World Cup XC race bike, but most XC bikes end up with a 50 mil stem on it. Still higher rise bars, just again, that position. I'm not a fan of the super stretched out, real hunched over. I have metal in my back and it doesn't like to be all like bent over. So that's kind of more of a me problem. But and it's also nice to have bikes feel pretty similar, like hopping on one to the other. And, if you have like a really big stem change or bar height change, it can feel kind of strange. But if I make my bikes pretty consistent, like a while ago, I went and just measured the distance from the pedals to the bars on a bunch of bikes. And then I had somehow just inherently made them all really similar, just without, I don't do a ton of measuring, but just by feel, they all kind of,
I did the same thing
similar
recently, but from the ground to the bar, just to see where like that bar height was. And they're almost the same on all of my builds.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I'll ask the same question to you two again in a second. But yeah, I've noticed that, except I used to go center of the grip, and I've noticed it's come up in recent years. Like, yeah, just without necessarily planning to. I don't like, it's just a good baseline setting to come back to for me. And it's my comfort has changed. Matt, you're specking an enduro bike, middle of the road, and you've got to take a punt on a stem and handlebar dimension. What are you going for?
I would say 40 stem and 35 mil rise bar. Let's say 64 head angle and 475 reach. So yeah, I would say that would be something I would find very easy to get on with. But if the head angle was maybe steeper, I'd go for a slightly longer stem, 50, and then conversely slacker head angle a little bit shorter.
Yeah. I should say
Dario,
my bar. I was going to say, we didn't really mention bar width either. Bar width can have a determination of what your steering feels like too. So if you're running like a longer stem with a narrower bar, is a different feel than running a short stem with a wide bar. There's just like different ways to affect how your bike is handling.
It's fucking complicated.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I run 770 wide bars on everything. If it were,
I think we all do. Hey, we're all on the 77.
I think we've all kind of.
I go 760 on the XC bikes.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which is still wide, but
if it's 64 or under, which I don't have like a hard line for this, but just enduro bike realm, 43 to 50 mil stem and a 40 mil rise bar.
43. I love how exact that is. I can't ride a 42
mil guy.
It's going to throw me off,
42
man.
is unrideable. I'm just saying, like, preferable terrain. A 40 to 50 mil stem, but ideally in the mid 40s. Like, I think that's becoming a more normal stem length, and I like that. It splits the difference well for me. So
yeah, I think I'm on like six. If the reach goes above, if the stack goes above 640, I go to a 25 mil rise bar. Below, I'm on a 35. But yeah, tend to be more like 40, 42, may I say?
There we go.
Mil stem. But it's interesting because we speak about it a lot. In general, it's one of the things that I know it feels like there are certain issues that as an editorial department, we're trying to constantly unpick on the rare events that we are not paid to see each other. We the once a year where we absolutely have to see each other. And one of the things is offset. And that's implication. Matt, I know it's something you and I have spoken about a lot. But why is it then, with all this, on a downhill bike, oftentimes, it's maybe been slower to move away from the 50 mil stem, and they've got a really high front with a very slack. What's the thinking there?
Front slack bike. And then you mentioned offset as well. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of parameters there. I think a lot of it comes down to what the rider is used to and comfortable with. And then changing one of those things is sort of like rearranging the whole puzzle. If you change one and you move away from your normal you could go in a totally wrong direction, even though there could be another great answer at the opposite end. So you have to change a bunch of things to figure out what that other best option could be. And I think sometimes through testing, riders move one piece at a time, and it's harder to land at that other end. But maybe just trial and error or whatever. I've found for my preference for super slack bikes or downhill bikes that shorter offset forks and moderately short stems can work better. That's my preference of how I weight the bike and how I turn the bike. But again, it's all based on all those body dimensions and bike dimensions as well. So,
well, I think like I like a 50mm stem on a downhill bike and a shorter offset. I think it's funny, like it feels like the longer offsets give the wheel more lever over your hands, and the longer stem gives your hands more lever over the wheel. And it's about balancing those out either way to suit your preference. Kaz, you once used a term that I really like about like the steering rainbow. Can you explain what you mean by this? Because I thought it was such a great way to talk about the body language issue I find with longer stems.
Yeah, we used to this came up years and years ago. I was working almost like, I don't know, 20 years ago, maybe even more. But when we were first starting to go to shorter stems from the long stems, when bikes had 60 or 70 was pretty normal. I feel like Specialized was pretty guilty of years. All their bikes, they would do different stem lengths for different sizes, but the largest would just have these super long stems. So we would
like 100mm stem. Yeah.
Yeah. But because it did feel like you were steering the rainbow almost, or like a big school bus steering wheel, it just felt like when you turned, it's just kind of a different feel. It's pretty slow feeling and kind of awkward now compared to what we're used to. So the shorter stem just kind of gets a little bit more precise, kind of makes your weight more over that front wheel. So, and this is more when things were a little bit more extreme. You can really feel that kind of half circle sensation of when you're turning. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I think when you ride, I know I was probably quite late to the shorter stem party. I had a 50mm stem on my Spire at one point. I really liked it. And then you kind of start nibbling away at it. And it's the body language thing for me now. I like to like be able to, when you go to that like bike body like separation, I like to be able to really separate them when you're kind of baked into, I feel, more treating it as like one unit when you've got a longer stem. And anyway, I think it's such a complicated thing. I hope that sort of answers your question.
Yeah, we said words, so hopefully he can get something.
As a general rule of thumb, something I find quite useful is based on the presumption of like a 40mm stem. I like ride around the car park. I like to have my hands as light as possible whilst the wheel isn't falling from side to side, like, stood up. And that's a really useful. And then if it's like, say, a 25mm rise bar on there and it's still feeling super light, I might go to a longer stem one, like a trail bike, maybe a 50mm. And vice versa. If I can get it high, I will, because I think it makes me feel safer on trails where you want to actually see where you're going and really looking up.
Worst case scenario, you can always just average all the numbers that we gave you and run that.
Divide them. Yeah.
Yep.
That's 42.9.
We'll have to do our 40. Yeah, the 42 versus 43mm shout out, the shootout.
No.
Which is better? Yeah. Final question. We're going to marathon this week.
I need some relationship advice when it
Yes.
comes to
baby.
biking. My Strava Wrapped just said that my girlfriend is my number one activity partner or whatever. And I want to improve our ride dynamic a little bit.
I'll say, was that a euphemism or?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Take the heart rate monitor
Getting
off of
into
that
mountain
stuff.
biking, she just upgraded to a full suspension from a hardtail. So she's making those normal steps. But we live here in Bellingham, and she has done the entrance feature on Unemployment Line one time and refuses to do it again. Granted, like, a lot of people have that kind of mental block in them to, like, they just, like, check something and never do it again. But how do I toe that line of, like, wanting her to excel and get better at biking without sounding like an asshole? Because every time
I was going to say, I mean, we've got a good little while of this question to go, but I think he's in that territory. I think he's flying.
I think you're
pretty
flying close to the sun here, dog.
How do you do it? You don't.
If she's having fun, let her be. I don't know. If it's not her goal to ride that feature or similar features every ride, then it doesn't need to be your goal.
Yeah, if you replace the word biking with chili con carne, your passion is chili con carne. If the person you love spending time with is also enjoying eating chili con carne, great. don't insist they have to eat as spicy as chili con carne as you.
He's like, yeah, I just don't. I like. She keeps throwing up after. It just seems to not be agreeing with her. But I'd really like her to eat more of it.
Yeah,
he's like slapping away the sour cream.
I get it. Like you want to see people do great things, but at the same time, it's like that has to be like a self.
Well, hey, let's let him finish the question. And see what he says.
Time she doesn't do it, I sound disappointed, and then she thinks that I'm mad at her, and there's like this weird, weird negative connotation with not doing hard things, I guess. But like where's that line? You guys have any advice for that?
You're towing it, dog.
Supportive to your partners, but also wanting them to try hard things and to grow as a biker. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Thanks.
Okay. So firstly, I think as a general rule to acknowledge, there's something about the intimacy of a relationship which can make it hard to teach each other things. I don't know why that is. It's just how that's just how it is. And so when you go into a new sport, it might be worth asking the question, do you want it to be that, like, do you know what I mean? Is that the dynamic that's going to make you both happy? First, let's talk about this. What is this feature? It's not something I'm familiar with.
It's like a 3 foot wide wooden roll that drops down like, I don't know, 8 feet or something.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty steep. It's kind of almost like a quarter pipe roll in. So it goes kind of like, doesn't go past vertical, but it's fairly vertical for a little bit. And then it kind of leads into some cobblestone rocks into a right turn. So it's
exposed. Like you're over.
There's no railings
space.
or anything.
Yeah. So you feel like you're, up there.
Okay. So we'll kind of rally through it. I mean, it's great that people are finally letting us into their personal lives. I'm so stoked.
Yeah, we should say I do appreciate that he called in. It's really good. He's actually sounds like he's genuine, and I really like that he called
100%.
Yeah.
Kaz, what's your gut read on the situation? Probably having seen lots of people get into mountain biking over the years through lots of different avenues.
Yes. Yeah, my advice is definitely don't push it when you're riding with her. You should just make it. You guys are having fun. You're out there for just a nice time in the woods. Don't try to push things. And definitely don't say like, oh, you should have done that. That's not the way to do it. But I would highly suggest getting her a lesson. Some lessons will help if it's something she wants to do. Like if she's into mountain biking, wants to progress, I don't think you're going to be the one to help her progress necessarily, at least to the level that like she shouldn't be taking lessons from you. So yeah, there's really good coaches here in Bellingham. Selfishly, my partner runs a mountain bike coaching business. So you could hit me up. I'll give you the name and that would be good. I just think it's
Lee McCormack. Does that?
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know that.
Me and Lee. Yeah, no, it's not that. It's not such a different state. But yeah. But no, I think that like a lesson, like whether a group lesson or a private lesson is just such a better way to learn because you have someone that actually knows how to teach things, which a lot of us have been riding for years. But if someone's like, how do you do this? And you try to explain it, you realize like, wait, I don't actually know how to explain that properly. So there are ways to explain things that are safer and more memorable and that. So yeah, I would just recommend lessons. If that's something she's into, that's a great way to start. And then once she's had her lesson, you guys can go out. Again, don't push her, but I think her comfort level will build as there's skills. I mean, she just graduated from hardtail to full suspension, and she's already dropping into what I'd say is a fairly, challenging trail. So I think I wouldn't push hard at all. Like just chill.
Matt, you've had, I suppose, am I right in thinking your partner rode motorbikes before you, and so she got you into riding moto?
Yeah.
Which I believe you mainly just do uphill against the gradient on mountain bike trails, which is sick.
I actually I ride unsanctioned loamers uphill.
Yeah, that's just out here rutting out loamers day in, day out.
What's your experience like that been? And I think you kind of got her into mountain biking, I think, or maybe,
we've done it
the comparative
more.
Experience been?
Yeah, we kind of go back and forth a little bit, like sharing those two passions, I guess. So yeah, I've done more moto. She's done more mountain biking in the past couple of years, and it's definitely tricky. I even find myself riding with different, like better riders on moto, and I've recently been in this situation where like, you know what? Like I don't want to do this thing that they're doing. I'm out here riding. I want to progress, and they're giving me advice, and I'm like, I know what I should be doing or what I could do, but it's not happening. And I'm like, no, I don't feel pressure because I know exactly what's going on, what I'm capable of, but I can definitely see both sides of the fence there. And I would say, yeah, the biggest thing is just you're there as the person trying to encourage the other person secretly, the best thing you can do is be there for support and not push them, and just communicate like what, maybe set out some goals for the day and don't stick to them at all. Like if they're not up for it, don't feel pressured to push them to do those things. Just say like, okay, we can move on or do something different. So yeah, that would be my advice. Be there for support and encouragement, but don't push.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. Like, I think as we can all, I mean, maybe this is something that's, how to put it, let's face it, there's the term mansplaining for a reason. Like, it is a phenomenon that does exist. And I think that you could view this as an opportunity either to, really push and challenge your girlfriend to get better at something, or to be the coolest person in the world. If you can be chill about this, do you know what I mean? That is like such a massive win, and it will be like, pretty good. Dario, how does it work in your polyamorous commune? Do you have a rota about who spends time with who?
Yeah, we consult the Excel spreadsheet to see who talks
bowling.
to who on the given day. No, my girlfriend and I occasionally ride together. She likes mountain biking but is not passionate about it, and I have no goals with mountain biking with her. It's just like a fun thing to do. I feel lucky to do it whenever I get to, and that's kind of the extent of it. I'm not like, you've got to go out there and hit these features today. I want to see elbows up, strong body position. There's just like, I don't know, like I get to ride every day. And so the days that I do ride with her are just like a different, like there aren't goals. Like I don't really have many goals in my own personal riding. Like there's features I want to hit and like ways I want to ride, obviously, but I'm not too fixated on like this specific feature is like my 2025 goal. It's just like you do things when you feel good, and hopefully she does the same thing. So that's kind of my 2 cents. I'll coach your girlfriend for free.
She's going to get her in the polyamorous commune, you dirty dog. Wow. Always expanding.
No, I'm just going to go out there drill sergeant style, just do some yelling. It's going to be great.
Pastel-colored Excel spreadsheet coming back.
It's, I don't know. It's a tricky thing because you do see, like you spend enough time in popular trail systems and you see these dynamics playing out in real time. And I, for one, love it. I think it's so funny to watch people get into an argument about mountain biking and like what they should be doing. That said, you could avoid the argument and probably have a better day. So,
and just being like, the last thing you want is for your girlfriend to get hurt. So you'll feel so
imagine
much worse.
The guilt. Yeah.
If you were like, you got it. And then, or you like kind of force her. So just don't do that. But yeah, I think just like keeping it nice, making it a fun sport, the longevity will be good. And if you do want to watch people, I was going to just say, and Dario says he sees the arguments on the trail. If you ever go climbing, like the dynamics of climbing, it's even crazier because you have your partner on the rope and then you get the back and forth yelling, like, lift your right hand up, and they're like, I can't. And it's like I've seen the biggest meltdowns climbing. Like,
never want to get into that.
No.
I think when you're learning or developing a new skill, as much as doing the right thing is helpful, sometimes just getting out there and clocking more hours is, get that sort of core understanding of it. And that might just be a case of, I don't know, like I said, I think you got something super cool. Like if you look, it sounds like you absolutely love mountain biking, and the person that you, according to Strava at least, love spending time with the most is getting into it. I think nurturing this very gently could be a really rewarding,
Yeah, real local legend of hanging out with your girlfriend,
Yeah.
Kudos.
Also, some group rides can be helpful too. Like it like makes more space between just you and her. Like the one-on-one is fine, but if you get some more people in there, like a mixed group, maybe some of her friends, then you kind of get a little bit more, just take some of the pressure off sometimes too.
Nice. Well, I think hopefully, let us know how it goes. If you make her do the feat, let us know if it goes wrong, and we can do. We can revisit it sometimes. But thank you very much for the question. Yeah, totally.
I'm not. Please let it be known that's facetious. I do not think I'd be a very good coach.
I feel like the Bellinger equivalent of like the Taekwondo instructor is mountain bike instructor. Yeah. I'm your tennis coach.
Yeah.
But no, thank you very much for everyone and their questions. And if you need any personal advice as much as anything, we are available. We can even, if you've got any speeding tickets, you want to fight, you need anything like that, just ring in. We'll work it out for you. Thank you very much. Do you want to do a music corner? We haven't done one in ages.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, we could.
You keen? And we'll just kind of spring out with that.
Yeah.
I'll start while you're searching because it occurred to me this morning. But there's a song called Empty and Silent, which I really, really like. It's got King Cruel on vocals, and it's just really nice. So that's going to be my one.
Mine will be Raw Meat by Black Lips. It's
Of course it
is. It sounds really aggressive, but it's not. It's got a lot of whistling. It's a pretty happy song. It's the theme song from King of the Road, the Thrasher skate series. And it's just good. I forgot about it, and I've been listening to it a lot recently.
You go next, Cass.
I think it was in that
I'm still looking.
new Caldwell film too.
the
Rut one.
Yeah, jump off things and hit ruts film.
Yeah.
Mine's a band called Skloss, SKLOSS, and it's The Pattern Speaks. No, they're really good. Taj Mihalic, I had lunch with him the other day. He told me about him, and it's his buddy Sandy. And Taj is actually in the music video for it. If you look, he's got a cameo. Yeah, it's sweet. It's really good. Skloss is the band, and it's
cool.
I'm excited. I'm going to play it on my show this week at my radio show because it's good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Matt?
I was just revisiting some old school snowboard movie soundtracks and rediscovered Mike Ness. So The Devil and Miss Jones. That's a good one.
Perfect. Cool. Well, we've covered off a lot of bases there. Some very vague answers to some very specific questions, meddling in personal lives, and some music that you may well not enjoy. Thank you very much for listening to the Pinkbike podcast. It's been a lot of fun, and we will catch you next time.